The man in cell 14 has been without running water for 6 weeks. You know this because you signed the maintenance deferral. You know this because the plumbing report is in the third drawer of your desk under a quarterly bonus projection that is considerably more interesting to the people who pay your salary. You know this because every morning you walk past cell 14 on your way to an office with functioning taps and you do not stop. You are 38 years old, warden of the Special Management Unit inside the Apex Correctional Partners facility in regional New South Wales. The state pays Apex $450 per inmate per day to house, feed, and rehabilitate the people a court has decided need to be somewhere else. Apex pays you $140,000 a year to make sure nobody looks too carefully at where the other $450 goes. Your daughter is 9. Her NDIS funding has gaps that the system designed specifically to be too complicated to close quickly. Specialists, equipment, assessments that cost more than a fortnight's groceries and are not covered and cannot wait. Your parents are in aged care and the invoices arrive monthly in envelopes that feel heavier than their weight. You have a mortgage on a house in Western Sydney that made sense when you bought it. You have learned, in the specific way people in your position learn things, that principle is a luxury product and you have been priced out of the market. So the man in cell 14 has been without running water for 6 weeks. That is where this begins. Not with a dramatic choice, not with a single moment of weakness you could point to later and say, there, that is where it happened. It begins with a maintenance form and a drawer and a man whose name you know but have stopped using. Luca arrives on a transfer from a corrective services NSW state facility on a Tuesday in March. Deputy Warden, 15 years in corrections. Clean record, genuine commendations, the kind of institutional knowledge that cannot be manufactured. He carries a framed photograph into his office and sets it on the desk before he unpacks anything else. His son in a junior rugby league uniform, 7 years old, holding a cricket bat almost as tall as he is, grinning with the gap-toothed confidence of a child who does not yet know what things cost. Luca talks about that kid the way some men talk about religion, quietly, consistently, like the boy is the load-bearing wall holding everything else up. First week, he walks you through the facility, the SMU corridor where the fluorescent tubes run at 70% brightness because full replacement exceeds the maintenance threshold requiring regional director approval. The shower blocks in cell block C where black mold has colonized the ground. The infirmary running on half-staff because Apex's most recent operational review identified medical as a cost center with optimization potential. Luca shakes his head slowly. He says, we are warehousing people, not rehabilitating them, but at least we should be keeping them alive. You like Luca immediately. You recognize in him the person you were 15 years ago, the person who thought the job meant something, the person who had not yet discovered what the job actually was. Regional Director Whitmore calls 3 weeks in. She manages from a glass office 60 kilometers away where the air conditioning is calibrated and nobody screams at 2 in the morning. She does not visit. She communicates through directives and the specific language of people who have learned to say brutal things in the vocabulary of logistics. She reminds you of the state contract's minimum occupancy clause, 93%. If the facility drops below that threshold, the state can renegotiate. Your job, she says this the way you might explain a vending machine restocking schedule, is to keep the beds full. You ask what happens when population drops naturally. Parole, good behavior, scheduled releases. She pauses the way people pause when they want the silence to do the work the words cannot. That, she says, is why we hired you. You should refuse. You sit at your desk for a long time after the call and you think about refusing, and then you open the third drawer and look at the quarterly projection, and you think about your daughter's next assessment and the aged care invoice due on the 14th. You do not refuse. You begin making adjustments. Precise ones. The disciplinary code type. Infractions that generated verbal warnings now generate written reports. Written reports now appear before the Serious Offenders Review Council with annotations you write yourself. Inmates statistically scheduled for parole in 6 months are denied and serve another 18. You are not breaking any laws. The guidelines contain enough discretionary language to absorb everything you are doing. You are bending the system until it faces the direction that pays your daughter's medical bills. Luca notices during a parole review for an inmate named Davis, 2 years clean, program completion, no incidents in 14 months. You have submitted a disciplinary notation citing a resolved event from 16 months ago. Luca reads the report. He looks at you. He says, this is garbage and you know it. You tell him it is procedure. He tells you procedure does not require torpedoing a man's freedom over a resolved write-up from over a year ago. You tell him to drop it. He does, but something shifts in the way he looks at you, like he is searching your familiar face for someone he met 3 weeks ago and finding the geography has changed. Whitmore calls again in the 3rd month. Apex is cutting the food budget by 20%. New supplier. The samples arrive looking like institutional defeat made edible, gray protein portions. Bread with the structural integrity of wet cardboard. The savings go directly to the quarterly report's cost efficiency column. You sign off. 8 days later, 12 inmates present with gastroenteritis severe enough for infirmary admission. Luca files a full incident report to NSW Health and the Independent Prison Watchdog. Accurate. Detailed. It would trigger an investigation reaching Whitmore's office within a fortnight. You intercept it. You rewrite it as a minor pre-existing gastrointestinal event, attributing the cluster to individual health histories, nodding that all food safety protocols were observed. Luca's version ceases to exist in any official record. Luca finds out on a Friday morning. He stands in your doorway without speaking. Then he says, "My son asks me what I do at work. I tell him I keep people safe." He walks away. That sentence follows you home. It sits at the dinner table. It stands in the corner of the bedroom while you lie awake. You start drinking on weeknights, just enough to lower the volume. The performance bonus structure arrives in the 6th month. Occupancy above 95%, 40,000 Australian dollars on top of your salary. Incident reports below threshold, another 20,000. Operational costs under budget, another 15,000. You are earning close to $200,000 a year. Your daughter's NDIS gaps are filled. She has the best specialists in the state, but when she looks at you across the dining table now, you realize you bought her health by selling the part of yourself she used to look up to. You cannot identify the exact moment she stopped running to the door when she heard your car in the driveway. You just notice, one evening, that she doesn't anymore. The infirmary goes to day shift only. You sign the order on a Wednesday. On Thursday at 11:17 p.m., an inmate named Hernandez has a seizure in his cell. He is 26 years old. Property theft. 8 months remaining on his sentence. The guards call emergency services immediately. There is no medical staff on site. The nearest hospital is an hour away on winding regional roads in the dark. Hernandez dies on the floor of his cell at 12:04 a.m. Apex's legal team has the media statement drafted before the coroner arrives. You read it in the morning and understand they prepared it before he died. They had the template. They knew this was a statistical probability, not an unforeseen event. The statement expresses condolences, notes that all protocols were followed, accurate in the narrowest possible sense and completely dishonest in every sense that matters. Luca knew Hernandez. They played chess during recreation. Luca comes into your office the morning after and sets his badge on your desk. He says he cannot do this anymore. He says he would rather drive a truck than work in a machine that lets a 26-year-old man die on a concrete floor to protect a line item. You look at the badge. You think about Whitmore, about the occupancy bonus, about your daughter's specialist appointments, and you do something you will not forgive yourself for. But you cannot blame Luca for the staffing cut. Your signature is on that order. Any ombudsman pulls the roster and the negligence charge collapses in seconds. So you do something more precise, more surgical, more dishonest. 3 weeks earlier, Hernandez submitted a formal medical complaint through the inmate request system. Chest tightness, fatigue. He ticked the box requesting review. The request sat in the intake queue, unprocessed, during a shift Luca supervised. Luca did not process it. Not negligently, he did not know it existed. The queue was backlogged because Apex cut the administrative support hours that month, but his name is on the shift log. The request is timestamped, and you have access to the documentation system. You add a notation, a single line. Deputy Warden briefed on outstanding medical requests. No escalation action taken. It did not happen, but it exists now, in the system, in Luca's file. You tell him that if he resigns and makes noise, you will refer this notation to the ombudsman as evidence of supervisory negligence contributing to a preventable death. His career ends. His son's departmental private health coverage ceases. Every corrections job he applies for will pull his file and find a dead man's name attached to his record. Luca stares at you. Something behind his eyes closes. Not suddenly. The way a door closes when someone on the other side has finally stopped trying to open it. He picks up his badge. He walks out. He says nothing. The silence is louder than anything anyone has ever said to you. He stays. He runs his shifts, files his reports, operates with the mechanical precision of someone who has removed themselves from the meaning of the work in order to keep doing it. The photograph of his son disappears from his desk. He stops talking about rugby league. He stops talking about much of anything that is not operationally necessary. A year passes. Apex wants to replicate the model. Your occupancy numbers are the best in the region. Your cost cost per inmate is the lowest in the state. Your incident reports are immaculate because you have become very good at making them immaculate. Whitmore promotes you to Regional Director of Operations. 5 facilities, 22,000 inmates, 210,000 Australian dollars a year plus stock options in the parent company. You write the Operational Excellence Framework, 112 pages. It reads like a business school thesis on supply chain efficiency. It is distributed to every new warden across 5 facilities. It is, in the most technically precise sense available to the English language, a manual for human warehousing, efficient, legally defensible, a document that does not contain the word cruelty because cruelty does not appear anywhere in the cost structure it describes. Here is what you learn to do in the regional director's chair that you could not do as a ward. You learn to make one phone call that changes 12,000 lives and feel nothing by the time you hang up. Not because you are a monster, because the distance between the decision and its consequences has become large enough that the consequences no longer feel like yours. That is the design. That is what the corner office is for. 3 years. 4 inmates dead from preventable medical conditions across the 5 facilities. Suicide rate running at 3 times the national average. The lowest parole approval rate in NSW because the system you built is architecturally designed to deny it. Apex stock climbs. The annual report mentions you by name as a key driver of operational efficiency. Nobody mentions the deaths. Deaths are in a different column. Your daughter is 15 now. Honor roll. Volleyball captain. She wants to be a lawyer. She asks you for advice about her debate tournament. You tell her that winning is not about truth. It is about making people believe your version of events. She writes it down. You watch her write it down and understand fully and finally what you have been teaching her for the last 6 years without meaning to. The journalist's name is Chen. She writes for a major metropolitan paper. She has received a tip about unusual parole denial patterns, suspicious disciplinary clustering, and a string of deaths across facilities reporting to the same regional director. The story runs on a Sunday. Front page. Your name in the second paragraph. By Monday, the state legislature announces a commission. By Wednesday, Apex's legal team is in your office, and they are not there to help you. They hand you a separation agreement. 200,000 Australian dollars. Non-disclosure. Clean exit. In exchange, your name stays out of the investigation. They will pin the operational decisions on facility-level management. You read to paragraph 11. Regional operational failures will be attributed to facility-level management in accordance with the company's decentralized accountability structure. Luca, they are going to use your signature to finish the job you started in his personnel file 3 years ago. The forged notation, the dead man's name, all of it pointed at Luca like a loaded document. You sit with the agreement for 4 hours. The clock ticks. The air conditioning hums. Outside, 42 floors down, Sydney moves without knowing your name. Then you call Chen. 9 hours. Everything. The emails, the memos, the operational excellence framework, Whitmore's directives, the occupancy clause, the bonus structure, the Hernandez statement drafted before he died, the forged notation in Luca's file, every body you buried in paperwork and every document you weaponized against a man who tried to do the right thing and paid for it. When you finish, she asks why you are doing this. You tell her you do not know. That is the truth. The story breaks 3 weeks later. Apex stock drops 40% in a day. The CEO resigns by lunch. 6 facilities enter state administration. Whitmore is indicted. 14 employees face charges. You face 12 counts: criminal negligence, falsifying government documents, conspiracy to defraud the state, and involuntary manslaughter for every person who died on a night shift you eliminated to protect a bonus. The trial takes 4 months. Your wife sits in the courtroom every day. Your daughter does not come. Your defense argues you were a cog in a machine. That Apex created the incentives and you followed them. The prosecution argues that a cog which knows it is grinding people apart and keeps turning is not an innocent mechanism. It is a choice being made repeatedly by a person who understood exactly what was happening and continued. The jury agrees with the prosecution. 7 years. Luca testifies on the 3rd day. He wears a suit that does not fit quite right. He describes the Hernandez report you intercepted, the forged notation, the morning he picked his badge back up and understood that there was no version of this job under your management that he could perform honestly. His voice does not shake. His eyes do not water. He is calm in the way people are calm when they have processed every stage of a grief and arrived at the far side carrying only what is true. The prosecutor asks whether he thinks you are a bad person. Luca looks at you directly for the first time in 3 years. He says, "He was my friend. He was the best warden I ever worked alongside. And then he became the system he was supposed to be running. I do not know know if that makes him bad. I just know I do not recognize him anymore. The transport van smells like industrial cleaner and recycled air. The guard driving does not know who you are. To him, you are an intake, a number, a bed to fill. You understand with a precision you did not have before exactly what that sentence means from the inside. Somewhere across the state, Luca is finishing a shift at a corrective services NSW facility. Lower pay, no bonuses, no stock option. The infirmary runs 24 hours. Nobody intercepts his reports. His son's photograph is back on the desk. The gap-toothed kid with the oversized bat, still grinning, still unaware of what things cost. The man in cell 14 has running water now. The state facility that replaced Apex fixed the plumbing in the first week. It took a work order, 2 plumbers, and 4 hours. It took you 6 weeks, and a maintenance deferral, and every rationalization you had to leave it broken. 7 years, 2,555 days. The arithmetic does not get easier with time. It just gets more precise. This is fiction. Apex Correctional Partners does not exist. The Occupancy Clause does. Privately operated correctional facilities in Australia operate under contracts that include minimum bed utilization requirements. The Serious Offenders Review Council is real. The Independent Prison Watchdog is real. The deaths are real. When the lawyer slides that $200,000 agreement across the desk, and paragraph 11 puts Luca's name where yours should be, what do you sign? Drop it in the comments. Subscribe to POV Ledger.